Today, Matt Walsh Show, a government employee in Pennsylvania claimed that she was the victim of a racist incident involving a noose. Surprising no one, it turns out it was a hoax, like literally every other racist noose incident this century. Also, we'll discuss a shocking story in Colorado of a teacher who essentially claimed custody over one of her gender-confused students, even as her actual parents desperately try to get the child back. Plus, the war on Teslas continue as the Tesla vandals get dumber and dumber by the day. We'll talk about all that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show. Let's talk about sleep, or rather the lack of it. You know what I'm talking about, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. while your mind helpfully lists everything you need to do tomorrow and the next day and possibly for the rest of your life. That's why I'm so excited to share something that's made a real difference in my life, Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a science-backed, healthy nighttime blend packed with ingredients shown to improve sleep, so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day, unlike those nights when your alarm feels like it's mocking you. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients, reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, and apigenin, and melatonin. I can pronounce that one. Fancy words that essentially mean you'll actually sleep tonight. My team and I are proud to partner with Beam so we can get the rest we need after busy work days and finally feel like we can tackle life head on instead of shuffling through the day. Beam has already improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, helping people across the country wake up and feel their best. Here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/Walsh and use code Walsh to check out. That's shopbeam.com/Walsh and use code Walsh for up to 40% off. Support an American company, invest in yourself, and start getting your best sleep tonight. Usually, miniaturization is a clear sign of human progress. When things get smaller, it means there's been a major breakthrough that required a lot of intellectual firepower to achieve. Handheld cell phones now have far more computing power than the cabinet-sized machines that NASA used to put the first man on the moon. Televisions that used to take up half the living room are now thinner than a pencil, and so on. None of these developments happened without a lot of ingenuity from some of the smartest people on the planet, but there is one recent high-profile example of miniaturization that, it has to be said, is not evidence of progress or cleverness or anything like that. In fact, it's quite the opposite. This particular example of miniaturization is yet more evidence that that there is an epidemic, a pandemic of stupidity across certain sectors of the United States. Put another way, in this case, shrinkage most definitely does not signal the advancement of human civilization. Instead, it signals quite possibly the death knell of a political movement, and not a moment too soon. I'm talking in particular about the size of a noose that was just used in a hate crime hoax in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Now, as you probably know, hate crime hoaxes involving nooses used to be a cottage industry on the left. They jumped the shark with Jussie Smollett, but up until that point, you couldn't go a month without hearing about one of these noose stories. And in every case, there was a life-size noose that was allegedly involved. Smollett said the MAGA subway assassins threw a noose around his neck and it fit around his neck perfectly. Bubba Wallace said he, had the full-size noose that was hanging in his garage. Turns out it was a garage door pull. Many, many more examples, which I'll get to some of them in a second. But as of this moment, as we sit here in the year 2025, it's my solemn duty to inform you that hate crime hoaxers are no longer using normal-sized nooses. The nooses that they use in these hoaxes have, in fact, shrunk. And they've shrunk dramatically to a comical degree. So take a look at this image here. You can see it up on the screen. This is a noose that back in January was reported to the police by a city employee in Allentown. And she says that she went to her desk and saw this miniature noose, this kind of like Barbie-sized noose on her laptop at work. And then she ran upstairs and told the cops about it. In a moment, I'll play some news footage about this incident to give you more context. But for now, when you just look at this news, you can see the size of it. And in case you're listening to the audio podcast, it's an image of a laptop computer apparently manufactured by Microsoft. And there's a noose on top of the laptop, and this noose is just a little bit bigger than the Microsoft logo on the laptop. It's barely the size of the stickers on the laptop. So we're talking about, this is like a noose for ants. If this noose is going to lynch anyone, it would have to be a character from Bug's Life or something. That's the extent of the damage that this thing could do. And yet, this is the noose that back in January and February caused a crisis of historic proportions in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Watch.
Well, as we know, dozens of folks voiced outrage in front of Allentown City Hall today. This is an investigation that is continuing into an item resembling a noose that was reportedly found on a city employee's desk. And our Nikki Dementri is got the latest now. She's in Lehigh County with reaction from the city and community leaders about this investigation.
When Black lives are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back.
A call for action and fight for change.
We will not be silenced.
Community members and leaders made their voices heard in front of Allentown City Hall Monday afternoon.
Just to think that people have to go to work in fear for their lives.
Since Friday, Allentown police continue to investigate an item resembling a noose found on a city employee's desk.
This egregious act is not just an affront to one individual, but it is an attack on the entire community.
Josie Lopez is a close friend of the victim.
They're always a community leader, always pushing for equality. They might be bruised right now, but they are not broken.
The victim is not being named due to safety concerns.
Our colleague was threatened. This was an act of terror. This was a hate crime.
It's an act of terror, hate crime, an egregious act. Somebody was trying to lynch a flea or a mosquito or something. And one of the first things that you notice when you pull up these videos on YouTube is that immediately, everybody knew it was fake. 2 months ago, every single comment was some variation of "it's a hoax." It's only on television in the corporate press that you're told to take this kind of nonsense seriously. You're supposed to feel sorry for the victim who's so traumatized by this microscopic noose that she can't even be named. It's just too dangerous to identify the person who reported this news. After all, as you heard, it's an act of terrorism. And therefore, the protesters demanded a full FBI investigation, which couldn't possibly backfire, of course. Watch.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Speakers presented a list of demands to city officials, including that the incident should be investigated as a federal hate crime. Councilwoman Cece Gerlach tells Action News that a member of Allentown's Department of Community and Economic Development made the disturbing discovery after the employee requested mediation for complaints about workplace discrimination. That hearing was set the day before this discovery.
So you got to call in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids division of the FBI to, they're the ones who specialize in microscopic, miniature-sized hate crimes. Now, if anyone involved in this reporting had any interest in actually doing their jobs, they'd immediately notice that the timing here is very suspicious. So here are the facts. A city employee has complained about bigotry in the workplace, and then within 24 hours of a hearing on that topic, a noose ends up on that person's desk. And that's pretty convenient, to say the least. It means one of two things is possible. Either we're dealing with an extremely committed racist, or we're seeing the exact same pattern that we saw with Jussie Smollett and a million other examples. I remember that Smollett was complaining about racism before he paid his two friends to stage an attack. He didn't think he was being taken seriously, probably because he was fabricating the whole thing. So he decided to take things a step further. But again, the local media, along with Allentown's mayor and the rest of the Democrat Party, told everyone to ignore their common sense and take this woman very seriously. And that continued right up until the investigation revealed what everyone already knew, which is that the city employee had planted the noose there herself. The employee, a woman named LaTarsha Brown, not even Latasha, LaTarsha, was the only person with DNA on the noose. So watch as the local CBS news station pretends to be shocked and horrified by this development, as if no one could have possibly seen it coming, other than every single person living in the state of Pennsylvania or anywhere else on the globe.
It was all a lie. That is according to police. An Allentown city worker claimed that she found a rope tied like a noose on her desk at work. It sparked an FBI investigation as people wondered if this was a hate crime. Now investigators say the worker staged the whole thing. Police say it took intricate DNA testing to solve this case in their minds.
And yes, a shocking turn in this case that brought protests and demand for change to Allentown. Police now saying they believe the woman that found that noose actually put it on her own desk. This item, resembling a noose, sparked outrage in Allentown when it was reportedly found on a city worker's desk in January. On Monday, police say they believe the person who found it put it there.
LaTarsha Brown was charged with tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, a misdemeanor of the second degree, and false reports to law enforcement.
Allentown police say they reviewed surveillance video and access records, interviewed other city employees, and asked for their DNA.
Every employee agreed, except for Ms. Brown.
Police also say Brown was initially cooperative with the investigation, but later asked it be discontinued.
So to recap, CBS Philadelphia, along with the mayor of Allentown, a bunch of Democrat activists, presented a completely unverified claim, one that was obviously fraudulent. They presented it as fact. They didn't do any research into the person making the claim. In fact, they wouldn't even tell you who the person was. At no point did they present any context, like the vast number of fake hate crime hoaxes involving nooses in this country. That's important context, that these things are always fake, but they didn't tell you that. And this is still happening in 2025 in a post-Smollett world. Just to explain exactly what happened, when LaTarsha Brown didn't provide her DNA voluntarily, the cops went to a judge and got a warrant that compelled her to do so. And then they compared her DNA with the DNA they recovered from the outer surface and inner knotted portion of the noose, and that was the smoking gun. Now, at this point, you might think that these activists, as well as the mayor, would demonstrate some degree of shame or humility after this total embarrassment, or at the very least, you might think that they'd stop talking about this case and just try to go away and pretend it never happened. But that's not true. They're actually doubling down. Watch.
Josie Lopez, a friend of Brown's who helped organize the rally, claims Brown has faced discrimination and retaliation in the past and is adamant she's innocent. In a statement, she said in part, quote, "This is not just an attack on LaTarsha. This is a warning to anyone in Allentown who dares stand up against injustice. This is a smear campaign. This is retaliation." But Mayor Matt Turk believes the incident has helped bring the conversation over inclusion to the forefront at City Hall.
That has helped lead conversations in City Hall about what it means to be inclusive, about what it means to respect each other's employment, and that will continue.
Yes, it's a frame. She's being set up. It's an inside job. So the woman's friend, the same activist from the video we played earlier, says that LaTarsha Brown. I don't know why LaTarsha is so funny to me, but it is. LaTarsha Brown is being framed, essentially, and the mayor of Allentown says that this is a great opportunity to talk about why we need more inclusivity. They don't even pretend to care about the fact that they lied to millions of people for 2 months in order to push a narrative that white supremacists are emboldened by Donald Trump or whatever. They don't announce any real consequences for this woman, who still hasn't been fired from her government job. As far as we know, she still has her job, almost certainly not going to jail. These people are willing to say anything except the truth, which is that this hate crime hoax, like so many others, once again demonstrates that the left's demand for racism in this country, as we always say, far outstrips the supply. But it's worth spending some time thinking about the specific kind of racism that Democrats seem intent on conjuring into existence. They're really, really hung up on nooses, no pun intended. They're convinced that white supremacists are lurking in the shadows with nooses all over the place, whether they're at NASCAR races or nondescript city offices in Allentown or random city blocks in Chicago. Anywhere you look, according to these people, there's a good chance a white supremacist is hiding in the bushes armed with a noose. So here's just a brief, very non-exhaustive recap of recent hate hoaxes involving nooses. Late last year in St. Louis, Missouri, a noose was found in the restroom of a stadium used by high school football teams. The NAACP immediately blamed the rope on conservatives, saying that they were responsible for fostering an atmosphere of bigotry. But the school district quickly found that, quote, "After extensive conversations and investigation, we do not believe this to be a racially motivated incident." Turns out to be a kid in crisis who had placed the noose, the school district said, without elaborating any further. But that didn't stop the school district from putting out a statement that basically blamed racism anyway. Quote, "We understand the symbolism of a noose and the harm has caused to our community. The Francis Howell School District will not tolerate hate or racially motivated violence in our schools or on our campuses." They're saying that even though they know that this was not hate or racially motivated. Also late last year, as reported by the College Fix, a staff member in Sherwood High School thought that she spotted a noose in a flagrant example of white supremacy. The staff member, quote, discovered a small rope tied in a manner resembling a noose draped over the fence surrounding the school's tennis court. In the end, it turned out to just be a normal rope. It was just a rope. But that didn't stop the principal of the school from apologizing anyway. Quote, while our investigation determined that the individuals involved did not intend to communicate a racist or anti-black message, the impact of such imagery is deeply harmful and cannot be understated. We recognize how disturbing and upsetting this symbol can be, particularly to our black community members, and we're treating this matter with the utmost seriousness. So he's apologizing for a rope. It was a rope that you could, if you go to Lowe's, Lowe's or Home Depot, you're going to find whole sections of rope. But to some people, just seeing a rope in any configuration is very traumatizing to them. It's like watching all the politicians reading the same script after they tested positive for COVID back in 2021 and 2022. They told us that they were really grateful for the vaccine, even as they admit the vaccine didn't prevent them from getting sick. It's a very similar kind of thing. In 2022, at the University of Virginia, there was a big uproar over a noose that was placed on the statue of Homer on the campus's south lawn. And according to UVA's Alumni magazine, the noose, quote, caused mounting unease for black UVA community members. UVA officials, including the president of the university, suggested that white supremacy was to blame. They had no evidence for saying that, but they just went ahead and made the claim anyway. In the end, it turned out that some guy who lived in the neighborhood nearby was really upset at Homer because they thought he was a pedophile, and so they put the noose there. There was no racial angle whatsoever. He just thought pedophiles should be punished, and so he decided to put the noose on Homer. Nobody at UVA apologized for lying about that episode either. And then, of course, in 2021 and 2022, as you may remember, this is my favorite personal favorite example of these kinds of stories, where nooses were reported at construction sites all over the country. Suddenly, out of the blue, construction workers decided to go full KKK, and they did it anywhere they could, whether it was Obama's presidential temple or random Amazon construction sites. The media was sure that the rope that they were finding everywhere had nothing to do with construction. It was definitely racism. And remarkably, despite national media attention and large cash rewards, they never caught the culprit in any of these incidents. They were shutting down construction sites all over the country because they kept finding rope, and they assumed that it was some sort of racist spree that was happening. And then they just moved on, even though they never found the person who did it, because there was no culprit. Because construction sites just have rope sometimes. It's like a thing you have on construction sites. But again, just as no one ever apologized when Bubba Wallace's noose turned out to be a door pull, no one apologized for this fake hysteria either. Nor did they apologize in 2018 after various news outlets, including CNN, CBS, and ABC News, reported on the discovery of several nooses in trees near the Mississippi state capitol. CBS reported that, quote, state and federal investigators are trying to find out who hung 7 nooses in trees outside the Mississippi Capitol early Monday, a day before a U.S. Senate runoff that has focused attention on the state's history of racist violence. In the end, it turned out that Democrats had placed the nooses. One of the signs in trees read as follows, quote, we're hanging nooses to remind people that times haven't changed. And somehow CBS failed to mention that in their exhaustive reporting. Then a year earlier at Michigan State University, a student claimed that a noose was hanging outside her dorm room. The university president immediately put out a statement alleging that racism was to blame. Quote, a noose is a symbol of intimidation and threat that has a horrendous history in America. This is according to the president. But in the end, the noose turned out to be a packaged leather shoelace that had been dropped on accident. Someone dropped a shoelace. A similar incident unfolded at Kansas State University in 2017 when students protested after a noose was supposedly found on campus, and they demanded more security and created a social media campaign called Don't Leave Us Hanging. But as Michelle Malkin pointed out in her exhaustive summary of these hoaxes, the alleged noose was really pieces of nylon parachute cord, which police believed had been discarded by someone who may have simply been practicing tying different kinds of knots. So much for that. Malkin also identified another race hoax in 2016 at Salisbury State University where, quote, students, faculty, and administrators were horrified when a stick figure hanging from a noose on a whiteboard was discovered at the school's library. And in the end, 2 black students were determined to be responsible for that. No charges were ever filed. And in 2015, over at the University of Delaware, BLM protested over alleged nooses hanging from trees. But those nooses ultimately were determined to be remnants of paper lanterns made out of metal that were used as decorations during some kind of celebration that weekend. There are honestly too many more examples to mention. Those are just a few. We can spend the next 5 hours going through more instances of noose hoaxes that were spread by Democrats. The point is that no sane person believes that anyone, no matter how racist that person might be, is going to place a tiny little noose on someone else's desk or at an Amazon construction site or in some tree on a university campus in some kind of bizarre attempt to terrorize black people. Like, this is not something that's actually happening in this country. The left has invented this symbol of the noose basically out of whole cloth. Like, when's the last time a white supremacist, an actual white supremacist, actually used a noose to send some kind of racist message in real life? Has there been one real confirmed case this century of that happening? Well, that's a question for professional race baiters to answer before they try to push another one of these hoaxes. And while they're at it, they should tell us why exactly left-wing activists are so preoccupied with nooses in particular. It's a bit like the anti-Tesla demonstrators who keep spraying swastikas all over the place. Whatever the case may be, there are a few assertions we can make with certainty. First of all, no conservatives are, out there hanging nooses everywhere or anywhere at all. Democrats certainly are, and they're continuing to do so long after any reasonable person will fall for the charade in a post-Smollett world. And that suggests that, we're not talking about carefully planned tactics here. Instead, we're talking about some kind of compulsion, even a full-blown psychological disorder playing out in front of millions of people. Democrats as a party have elected to embrace this particular disorder as they've embraced so many others. From Allentown to UVA to Obama's temple to Bubba Wallace's garage, the evidence is unmistakable. You're either with Team Sanity or you're with the race hoaxers, knotting the world's tiniest noose as sane people everywhere play the world's tiniest violin. And if the events in Allentown demonstrate anything, it's that Democrats, to their detriment and quite possibly their destruction, have made their choice as clear as they possibly can. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Cozy Earth products are designed to transform your 5 to 9, the time that matters most, into the coziest sanctuary. Look, after spending all day fighting the culture war and dealing with the insanity of modern society, you need somewhere to escape and actually get some rest. With Cozy Earth, luxury starts where you rest. Your bedroom should be more than just a place to sleep. It should be a retreat. Cozy Earth's best-selling bamboo sheets are buttery soft, temperature regulating, and crafted for 5-star comfort every single night. I've tried their bamboo sheet set, and I personally love them. Made from viscose from bamboo, these sheets are truly engineered to keep you several degrees cooler at night, and it shows. As we head into summer, those few degrees will make all the difference for getting a good night's rest. And unlike most products today that seem designed to fall apart, these are guaranteed for 10 years. Plus, Cozy Earth doesn't just excel in bed sheets, they also offer phenomenal luxe bath sheets. These are oversized towels that offer spa-quality softness right in your home. They're impressively large, highly absorbent, and incredibly soft. Luxury shouldn't be out of reach. Visit CozyEarth.com/Walsh and use my exclusive code for up to 40% off. The code is Walsh for up to 40% off on Cozy Earth's best-selling sheets, towels, pajamas, and more. That's CozyEarth.com/Walsh. If you get a post-purchase survey, tell them you heard about Cozy Earth right here. Sanctuary waits at Cozy Earth. Here's an incredible story from the Daily Wire. Incredible in all the worst ways. Just want to read some of this, but the whole report is going. It's worth going to read the whole thing. An LGBT activist teacher in Colorado and her trans-identifying male husband are housing a 17-year-old girl who identifies as a boy. Police say they are unable to intervene to bring the teen home to her mother. Joanne Smotherman, a former math teacher at Durango High School, took the teen, Smotherman, that's actually her name, one of her students, into her Durango home in December when the girl left home after a fight with her mother. Joanne is married to Vivian Smotherman, a trans-identifying man who ran for Colorado State Senate as a Democrat last year. The teen's mother, Cynthia Stein, has gone to the Smotherman's home and attempted unsuccessfully to take back her daughter. She called in the police, but the officers who responded to the scene said they would not force the teen to go home, according to the police report and body cam footage that was obtained by the Daily Wire. The situation is a culmination of months of outside influences on the vulnerable teen. Her mother told the Daily Wire. The 17-year-old girl has identified as a boy since the fall and now uses a unisex name. She's been diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and eating disorder, depression, and anxiety. At school, the team was seeing a counselor without her mother's knowledge who advised the girl to terminate parental notification and encouraged her to participate in LGBT support groups, her mother said. So this is someone at the school advising the girl to stop talking to her parents. This is the kind of advice that kids are getting at school now from other adults. The turn to radical gender ideology came amid difficult times at home. Stein underwent treatment for an aggressive cancer in 2023 and believes that crisis deeply affected her daughter, who became very withdrawn from the family. Stein told the Daily Wire, "Smotherman stepped in, took advantage of my kid. She just inserted herself into my family, and I still can't get her out." And then the article goes on to talk about when Stein took a couple friends, went to the house where the Smothermans live. So that's the former teacher, the trans guy, and now the kid, who they brought the kid into their house. Stein shows up to get her child back, knocking on the door saying, "You have my child, who is still a minor. Give her back to me." The adults refuse to give the child back. So Stein calls the police, as one would do in this situation. Okay, this is like kidnapping. You have a child that you refuse to return, so you would think that this is a kidnapping case. And the police show up, and the interaction is recorded on body cam. I don't think we have the body cam footage, but the police are not responsive. They do absolutely nothing to help the mother, and they tell the mother that there's nothing they can do, that the child is not in any kind of distress, according to them, and so they're not going to do anything about it. So they basically tell her, tough luck. And, when I see stories like this, and this is one of the worst we've ever seen of what happens in the schools, the school indoctrination. This is one of the worst cases we've ever seen. I mean, this is like every parent's worst nightmare. And then you've got these other adults that are not only taking advantage of a confused child, but taking advantage of a child who is clearly traumatized from a terrible medical episode involving her mother. I mean, her mother had cancer. The girl's traumatized in part by that, understandably so. And then you've got these two radical LGBT nutcases that come in to take advantage of the whole situation, which is why I have to be very careful, because I can't be too honest. I try to be very honest, but I cannot be too honest about what I really think of the two evil pieces of trash who stole this child from her mother. I cannot go into too much detail about what I think should happen to them. So I have to choose my words very wisely, because this kind of story the rage that boils inside of me, and I can't even imagine. Like, I don't even know this kid. And if I feel this enraged by it, and as you must feel hearing about it, I can't even imagine the parents of the child and how they must feel. And I feel that rage also at the police officers who showed up and not only didn't help the mother, but were very dismissive and even kind of mocking and belittling of her. It's one thing if the law prevents you from intervening, prevents you as the police officer from removing the child from the home. I can't understand how the law would prevent that. She is a minor. And she's not 18 yet. If she was 18 years old, then yeah, they could always argue, well, she's a legal adult. We can't, if she wants to be in this house, we can't do anything about it. But she is a minor, and so it shouldn't actually matter. The fact that she wants to be in the house shouldn't actually matter. I'm the parent. I don't want her in that house with those people. So it's hard for me to believe that the law would actually prevent the police officers from removing the child. But even if they would, even if the law does, at the very least, you should be very sympathetic to this mother. A mother who just wants her child back. You should be able to sympathize with her and there's no sympathy from these officers at all. So the police officers and the two lunatics who took this girl are just monsters. They're total monsters. And this is why, you really shouldn't have your kid in public school to begin with, if you can help it. Not everybody can, I understand that. At the very least, if your child is struggling in any way with these kinds of issues, if she's dealing with any kind of gender dysphoria or anything approaching that, then, you have to do everything you can to get, in particular in that case, to get your child out of the public school system. And I'm not saying this to blame the mother. I'm saying it for the sake of the next potential victim. And when I say victim, I mean both the children are victims and the parents in these kinds of cases are both victims. So to prevent any future incidents like this, we all have to understand that public schools prey on confused children like this. The LGBT, there's a reason I call it a cult. It functions exactly like a cult. They look for confused young people who are having problems at home, and they prey on them. They prey on the weak, the scared, the confused. And while your child is at school, you have no access to your child. You don't know what your child's being told. This girl was apparently in counseling without the mother's knowledge. And that's the other thing you have to remember, is that the vast majority of counselors and therapists cannot be trusted. It's not just that they can't be trusted. The vast majority of therapists and counselors are a clear and present danger to your child. Like, I would never put my kids in therapy or counseling at this point. I just wouldn't do it. And there are a few therapists and counselors out there who you could trust. There are some good ones out there. Like, I'm not trying to entirely throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some good ones out there, but how are you supposed to know? Unless it's someone's a close family friend or something. I mean, if you get a really, really reliable referral, then maybe then. But so many of these people are radical leftists. And you're giving them access not just to your child, but to your child's mind. It's like you're giving them direct access to your child's mind to do whatever they want to do. And so many of these people cannot, they're just bad people. The counselor at this school is not simply a radical leftist, but a bad person, an evil person. And there are a lot of really evil people that are working in this industry. And so you got to be very careful about that. Okay, we have another video of some random loser vandalizing a Tesla. And first we'll look at the video. There's no audio for this, but I think we have the video. This guy just, do we have this video? There he is. Okay. So he walks up, pulls the key out, keys the car, outside of an Olive Garden. This happened in Wichita, Kansas, outside of an Olive Garden. And you can see this guy, this kind of clumpy, disheveled loser with his, I think it's apparently Lilo and Stitch pajama pants that he's wearing. And we'll get back to that in a moment. But there is an update to this story. Local news is on the case. So we know whose car was vandalized. And it turns out it was a disabled woman whose car this was. Watch the report.
Damaging a personal vehicle does not affect Elon. If anything, it's giving him more money to fix the vehicle that you damaged. It's not damaging who you're thinking it is.
Just before 6 p.m. on Thursday, Abigail Gill and her family were seated for dinner at Olive Garden. Over an hour later, they left, and what they found waiting for them was shocking.
Quite a lot of damage. He keyed this side as well, which, as you can see, this side, it even looks like it affected above the tire. This is a lot more damage.
This comes less than a week after a possible arson at a Tesla dealership in Kansas City. Gill believes her brand new Tesla was targeted because of the current political climate and perception of Tesla CEO Elon Musk.
But it felt really disappointing that this is happening in such a great country, a great state. So for this to be happening in Kansas, of all places, is super shocking.
She says her family has had discussions around if it's even safe to be driving a Tesla anymore, in part because of incidents like hers. If she could send a message to the man who keyed her car, it's this.
You have put a very big crisis on me because physically I am in a wheelchair. I just hope that he definitely gets the correct punishment. I hope he pays all of the damages. It is well over $1,000, possibly over $10,000 of damage. I hope that the Wichita police continue to find him.
So there's the latest on the report, and you know, obviously all the people vandalizing Teslas and attacking Tesla owners, they should all go to jail. I think that they should be charged with domestic terrorism. This is domestic terrorism. And normally it wouldn't be, right? To key somebody's car, slash their tires, whatever, throw something in someone's car. It's against the law. You should be punished for it. Would normally call it domestic terrorism. But in this case, it is because this is politically motivated violence and property damage. Politically motivated, and it's designed to make people afraid. So it is terrorism by any definition of the term. You're politically motivated, and you're doing it because you want people to stop buying Teslas. And you want them to stop buying Teslas because you want them to be afraid. You want them to be afraid to drive a Tesla. That's the whole point. That's the stated goal here, which means that it is terrorism. And that's how these people should be charged. Think about what the left would do in this situation and do the same. As I pointed out before, you can only imagine if there had been widespread violence and vandalism directed at Bud Light or Bud Light customers or Bud Light trucks or Bud Light warehouses or stores that carry Bud Light. If there had been widespread violence and vandalism directed at those people and places, you can only imagine what the Biden administration would have done. The Biden administration would have loved to start throwing people in federal prison. And we all know that. So let's give them a nice taste of their own medicine on this one. And you think about how just totally brainless these people are. And this is one of the great advantages that the left has, that their people, the average leftist, is highly programmable. You know, all you have to do is just press a few buttons and they will start marching to whatever your new orders are. And that's exactly how these people went from celebrating Tesla because it's saving the environment to lashing out violently at any Tesla they see. And I know I've pointed this out before, but it's easy to forget that it wasn't that long ago that the left, they were huge Tesla fans and also Elon Musk fans. They celebrated Elon Musk prior to him buying Twitter. They celebrated him for this reason, that he was had owned a company that was fighting back against the fossil fuel industry or whatever. I mean, according to them, he was helping to save the environment. I don't personally think that driving a Tesla is going to do anything to affect the weather one way or another, but they think that. And so it's easy to forget that it wasn't all that long ago. And now just how quickly they flip on a dime, and they're doing this even though everybody knows at this point that the Teslas all have cameras. They're still doing it. Potentially going to jail for the sake of making some asinine political point by vandalizing a Tesla. They're just sort of following the programming. And you notice how there is, from what I've seen, there is basically no discussion or debate on the left about this. Now, we know if there was some kind of rash of people on the right participating in this sort of vandalism, which is hard to imagine, but if it was happening, let's say that Bud Light scenario was actually happening, what we know is that there would be a bunch of people on our side who object to it. It would be a major point of contention and debate. I mean, X, right, would be full of conservatives posting about how they object to these kinds of tactics being used. Then you'd have other conservatives saying that, no, we need to use these kinds of tactics. There would be this pretty intense argument, debate, fight back and forth on the right about this. And that is, again, if we're imagining a greatly implausible world where conservatives become vandals, even in that world, it would be the subject of very intense debate on the right. you would have a whole lot of people on the right coming out and saying, I don't agree with this, we shouldn't be doing this, this is not the right approach. It's kind of amazing that on the left, there's none of that. None. There is no debate, no discussion. Has there been one person on the left? I mean, even one. Has one even semi-high profile leftist come out and said specifically, listen, guys, we should not be doing this. Don't go and attack random cars that you see parked in an Olive Garden. Okay, the person who drove that car didn't do anything to you. They might even be on our side. They might be Democrat voters. Remember, these are eco-friendly cars. A lot of leftists bought them. A lot of people on our side bought them. Please stop doing this. Like, there's nobody on the left saying that. Nobody. Instead, what you get are a lot of high-profile leftists, from Tim Walz to late night hosts, and so leftists in the political scene and entertainment industry that are directly encouraging more of it, and then all the rest of them are conspicuously silent about it. But there is no dissenting opinion here. Nobody speaking up and saying, let's not do this. Which is why the only way to stop them is to start throwing them in federal prison for domestic terrorism. It's the only way. And speaking of that, I also need to say that I think it's important to point out, maybe even this is perhaps a more important point, that the guy in that video in particular should go to federal prison for wearing pajama pants in public. And we don't even have to get into the fact that they're Disney cartoon pajama pants. That's insult to injury. But adult men who wear pajama pants in public should be thrown in Gitmo. Maybe we can send them down to El Salvador. They got plenty of room apparently in their prisons down there. Bukele is always happy to build another prison, so maybe we could do a whole new prison just for guys like this who wear pajama pants in public. It is the laziness and lack of self-respect it requires to wear pajama pants in public as a grown man is truly mind-boggling. How much effort does it take to just change your pants before you leave the house? Okay, you're about to leave your house. You're wearing Lilo and Stitch pajama pants, which you shouldn't be wearing those to begin with, but okay, you're going to leave the house. You're going to Olive Garden. And look, I know that Olive Garden is not exactly upscale dining. I get that. It's a sit-down restaurant. It's a decent place. I can go to Olive Garden sometimes. It's at least formal enough that you should change out of your pajamas before you go there. How much effort does it take to change your pants? Like 45 seconds? Just throw some jeans on? You don't need to put a suit on. No one's saying that. Put some jeans on. 45 seconds. That's it. Now, I know this guy's out of shape. He's pretty fat. Maybe it might take him longer. He doesn't have the same dexterity that other people have to change. So maybe the changing the pants for him is a bit more of a routine. But even then, like 2 to 3 minutes at most. I mean, how long can it take even for a fat, out of shape guy to change his pants? I cannot imagine any scenario where I would wear pajama pants in public. I'm not even kidding. If my house was burning down and I was wearing pajama pants, I would take I'd get my wife and kids out of the house. I would do that first. And then I would run back in. After all the kids are out and my wife is out, everyone's safe, I'd say to my wife, hang on, I got to run back and grab one more thing. And she would scream like, are you crazy? The house is burning down. I got to change. I can't stay out here in my pajama pants. The fire department's going to come. They're going to laugh at me wearing pajama pants out in public now. I would run back in. I would die. I would rather die than be seen wearing pajama pants in public. And yet you got these guys doing this. It's just, that is the real problem here, I would say. All right. Before we move on, we got to talk about, we don't really have to talk about this, but we're gonna talk about this because this has to be, I'm not sure if it claims the title yet. I don't know where this is ranked, but this has to be one of the most viral videos in the history of X, and that includes when X was Twitter. This is a platform that's been around for, 15 years or something. This video that I'm about to play has got to be one of the most viral videos ever in the history of the platform. And not just on Twitter. This is originally a TikTok video that we're about to see. So this Just on Twitter, this video has 700 million views. Only on Twitter in the last 4 or 5 days. Over 700 million. I looked last night, it was 700 million. So it's over 700 million. Which is insane. And even more insane when you see what the video is, if you haven't seen it yet. Now, 700 million views, it seems like every person in the country has seen it. But if you haven't, this is a video of some influencer's morning routine. Or at least it's this influencer's performance of what he wants you to think his morning routine is. Because as you'll see, this is definitely not actually his morning routine. This is not anyone, no human being has a morning routine like this one. But this is the video, 700 million views on one platform. There's no audio, so I'll probably have to narrate a little bit. And so we'll go ahead and play. So there it is, 3:52 a.m. He's standing there because now he's brushing his teeth, 3:54 a.m., bottled water. He's washing his mouth out with bottled water, 4 a.m., goes out on the porch. 4:04 a.m., now he's doing some push-ups. 4:17 a.m., now he's just standing there. He's got bottled water again. Now he's sitting down at 4:30 a.m. I guess he's praying. He's writing a note at 4:50. Now 4:55, he's writing for about 10 minutes. 5:30 a.m., 5:46 a.m., dunking his face into ice water. 6 a.m., getting dressed. I guess he's going out to do a run. Putting on a bunch of jewelry to go run. Putting the fanny pack on. Okay, now he's going down. 6:24 a.m. The day started at 3:58, and now he's running. 7:30 a.m., heading to the pool. Jumping in the pool. Getting out of the pool. It's 7:50 a.m. 8 a.m., now he's leaving. Okay, we're gonna take a shower. We don't need to see this, but he decided to film that. 8:30 a.m., eating a banana, wiping a banana on his face at 8:34 a.m.
So looking at it, bro, we gotta go ahead.
Dunking his face into water again, 9:15 a.m. Now he's eating breakfast. Okay. And what do we get to? We get to 9:25 a.m. He's finally eating breakfast. Oh, there's more bottled water. Fancy bottled water. Now, so this is a morning routine that begins at 3:50 a.m. and ends at like 9:45 a.m. That's 6 hours. His morning routine is 6 hours long. And it's actually a lot longer than that because in real time, he had to set up all those camera angles. Every time he was walking out of if you catch him walking in a hallway or walking into an elevator, he had to set up the tripod, get the shot, come back, collect the camera, and then go walk it again. So the actual morning routine, as it was documented, was probably more like 19 hours long. By the time he was finished it was time for another morning routine. So this guy is stuck in a perpetual loop of morning routines. This guy has not slept in 5 years because it's like Sisyphus with the boulder, but it's just morning routines that never end. And of course, it's totally fake. This is not what anyone's morning routine looks like. If I was doing a video of my morning routine, which I would never do, but my morning routine, which I think is much more realistic, it begins at 6:03 a.m. about when my alarm goes off. And then I go back, I turn the alarm off, I go back to sleep. My morning routine starts again at about 6:09 a.m. when the alarm goes off again. Turn the alarm off again, I go back to sleep. And then the morning routine kicks off again at about 6:17 a.m. when the alarm goes off. Turn it off again. Morning routine picks up again at about 6:27 a.m. when my alarm goes off again. And then this continues until about 6:45 a.m. or until my wife is just like beating me over the head with a shovel to get me out of bed. And that's basically the way it works. Of course, I would never film that. And it is fascinating that this sort of content is so popular. Now, certainly a fair amount of the traffic is from people like me, just trying to figure out why other people are watching it. When I first saw this video, it was at that point at 600 million views. And so I can't help. I mean, I see a video that's at 600 million views. I think, what is this? Why is everyone watching this thing? And it's captioned morning routine. So I'm thinking, what is going to happen? Like, something incredible is going to happen in this video that it's got so many views, but then nothing happens. I think that's part of it. Everybody watching it and wondering why other people are watching it. That explains some of the phenomena, but it's not just that. Because these guys, these influencers, they do develop actual audiences. They have real followings of people who enjoy their content, really enjoy it. Why do they enjoy it? What value do they derive from it? Partly, I'm guessing it's kind of aspirational that people watch a video like that and they fantasize about being so rich that they can afford to spend 6 hours of each day swimming in a pool and rubbing bananas on their faces or whatever. I think that's part of it. But then there's also the fact that, and this is what jumps out at me the most when I see videos like this, because we've had other videos. There's another guy that I've seen. He takes videos of himself. Maybe we played it on the show one time. He takes videos of himself going shopping. He just runs errands. That's it. Nothing happens. He's just running an errand at like Walgreens or something, and he films it. Sets up the tripod, right? When he's in the shampoo aisle, gets a shot of himself grabbing some shampoo, grabs the camera, goes over to the toothpaste aisle. We get the shot of him grabbing some toothpaste. This is what people do now. People watch these videos, and I think that it speaks to the fact that people are just so incredibly deeply lonely that people will sit there and watch this as some kind of substitute for actual human connection. It is, it's very sad, but it's a popular trend. A lot of money to be made in it. Maybe I should jump in. Tax season's here again, and the IRS is not messing around in 2025. Look, I get it. Tax problems are about as fun as a root canal. Maybe you've got some unfiled returns collecting dust, or you're sitting on a pile of back taxes that's giving you night sweats. With April 15th breathing down your neck, it's tempting to just walk into the woods alone, never look back, and hope it all goes away. But here's the thing. Trying to ghost the IRS, well, that's not going to end well for you. That's why you should let Tax Network USA deal with this headache for you. These folks aren't your average tax people. They've got a direct line to the IRS. They know exactly who to talk to. Whether you're in the hole for 10K or 10 mil, they've got tricks up their sleeves that actually work. They've already sorted out over $1 billion in tax debt, so they must be doing something right. Talk with one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters. Stop looking over your shoulder and protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh. April 15th is just around the corner, so act now before the IRS acts first. If we're winning, it means the left is bleeding. DEI is collapsing. Walmart, Meta, Morgan Stanley are backing away from the woke agenda because Americans are done playing along. Trump signed Keep Men Out of Women's Sports, and the NCAA started to backpedal the next day. The University of Maine caved. Columbia is quietly rewriting policy like nobody's watching. The left's grip is slipping, and they can feel it. But don't pop the champagne yet. They'll be back louder and more radical than ever, and that's why we exist. The Daily Wire will keep up the fight even when you don't have time to. This is your media. This is your movement. Join the fight. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe right now. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. Usually we have a comment section during the show where I read and respond to comments, as the name of the segment would imply. Today we're going to do things a little differently and move the comments into the daily cancellation, because this is one of those rare occurrences where the comments, some of them anyway, were so outrageously off base that I have no choice but to turn them into a cancellation segment. For some background, yesterday we talked about the efforts by the Trump administration to ban junk food from the SNAP program, otherwise known as the food stamp program. Trump is not looking to ban junk food entirely. He's not trying to prevent anyone from buying junk food. The point is that you shouldn't be able to use taxpayer money on soda and candy and that sort of thing. Very common sense position, and one that should have near unanimous agreement among conservatives. It's one of the most basic conservative positions imaginable. But as we discussed yesterday, certain conservative influencers came out against this policy change. They suddenly felt very passionate about making sure that people can still use food stamps on soda and junk food. And the pivot seemed quite bizarre until it came to light that apparently many of these influencers were paid off by the soda industry. Or more specifically, they were paid off by a PR firm working on behalf of the soda industry. And we covered all that on Monday's show. But as I was scrolling through the comments, preparing for our comment section segment, I found a very surprising number of comments from people who presumably have not been paid off by Big Soda, or though maybe they have, but they still feel strongly that taxpayers should be forced to give diabetes to the poor in the form of sugary drinks and other junk food. And these comments are so erroneous and misguided that I feel compelled to deal with them here in this segment. So let's first go through and read a few of these, and then I will respond. So I'll just read about 6 or 7 of the comments. First one says, awful takes. The real problem is who gets to define junk food? If you were even remotely conservative, as you claim, you'd immediately understand the implications. Next comment says, so Matt, which is it? Do you really care about the health of poor people, or are you just bitter about the government using your tax money for the SNAP program? Next comment says, does Matt think that poor people's children shouldn't have treats of any kind either? If you can't use food stamps for treats, then the children of those people would never get to any treats at all, ever. Does he begrudge people who work for the government spending his money as a taxpayer on treats as well? After all, it's his money too. Come on, Matt, allow people to spend whatever money on stamps they have on whatever they choose to buy, regardless of where it came from. Another comment says, Matt, think about what you're saying. Candy and soda are not the only junk foods in America. 2% milk, American cheese, more chemicals than cheese, all lunch meat, jellies and peanut butter loaded with sugar and salt, all TV dinners, and I could go on and on for several pages about America's junk food. Ban it all or none. Next comment says, this ban is a bit ridiculous, and I'm a clean-eating fitness freak who's not on food stamps. Junk food is still food. It has nutritional value. I could see banning cigarettes, for example, or any inedible item, but ranch dressing is pretty bad for us. Is that going to be banned? What about actual granulated sugar, which is used for cooking? Next on the ban list, what about juice? Usually not made with actual fruit and loaded with sugar. Is that banned? So maybe we should ban everything except chicken, broccoli, and rice. LOL. I'd say do a Let's Get Healthy America program in a better way than singling out the poor. Next comment says, the problem about limiting it to certain foods is it creates a bureaucratic quagmire of ensuring they only work for which foods. Next comment, it's government overreach, full stop. Agree to disagree. And then, yet you're not allowed to use food stamps on health supplements. Why is this? Totalitarianism starts with small issues. That's about 7 or 8 of the comments, a representative sample. I'll respond to the points made here, even though I covered most of them yesterday. But then I want to make sort of an overarching point that I haven't raised yet about this. But first of all, defining junk food, it's like defining pornography. You know it when you see it. Okay, there may be certain kinds of foods that blur the line between healthy and junk, but like 80 or 90% of junk food is not anywhere close to that line. Okay, we could debate whether, say, I don't know, Frosted Mini Wheats cereal counts as junk food. There's no debate that a Twix candy bar is junk food. And under the current policy, you can use food stamps to buy candy bars. Go to the candy aisle of the grocery store, and you can use food stamps on all that stuff. I think everyone understands that the candy aisle is junk food. And lots of people do use food stamps on that stuff. Talk to anyone who's ever worked the cash register at a grocery store. Food stamp recipients come in and buy huge amounts of candy constantly. These commenters are doing what leftists always do, which is to try and prevent us from making any positive changes or any sensible reforms by obsessing over the edge cases. This is a very common tactic. The less than 10% of hard cases means that we can't do anything about the 90% of cases that are not hard at all. Again, a very common tactic, and it has held our country hostage for years, unable to make any substantial improvements in any areas at all. And I'm pretty tired of it. Second, it's not government overreach to put rules in place for what kind of food can be purchased with food stamps, because the whole program is a government program. Like, these rules would actually limit the program. They would allow the money to be spent on fewer things, which limits the reach and scope of the program. It's the opposite of government overreach. Allowing people to spend taxpayer money on whatever they want at the grocery store, that is government overreach. How in the world can limitations on a government program be overreach? It's the opposite. Third, all of these comments and all the people outraged over the idea of putting these very sensible restrictions on the food stamp program, they're all simply just ignoring the fact that giant soda companies are paying people to advocate against the limits. Why are they doing that? Well, obviously, because Coca-Cola and PepsiCo and all these other multi-billion-dollar junk food distributors, they make billions of dollars in profit off of food stamps. So this is corporate welfare in the most literal possible sense. This is corporations benefiting from welfare. Do you really think that money should be taken by force out of the pockets of taxpayers and given to PepsiCo? Do you actually think that it's tyranny if the government doesn't give billions of dollars of tax money to soda companies every year? Allowing Americans to choose whether they buy soda instead of forcing them to subsidize these purchases, how is that tyranny? We're talking about more autonomy, more choice, less corporate welfare, more accountability for how our tax money is spent, and all of that is tyranny? Like, what the hell are you talking about? And finally, to get to a point we haven't discussed yet, government welfare programs are not supposed to be a lifestyle. If being on these programs means that you don't have access to some of the simple luxuries of life, like candy and soda, well, that's a good thing. It's all the more motivation to get back on your feet and off the program. That's what we're supposed to want. If you actually are concerned about government overreach, well, how about the overreach of having at present about 42 million people on food stamps? That is like 13% of the American population. Does anyone really think that 13% of the American population is incapable of providing food for themselves? If we didn't have food stamps, would 13% of the population starve to death? Here's a question. If you were a tyrant, if you were actually a tyrant, who wanted to have total control over the population, which would you prefer? To have lots of people depending on you for food, or to have only a few people depending on you for food? Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious. The welfare state has grown into this gargantuan size because it suits the interests of the government. The more dependent the population is on them, the more malleable, the more pliable, the more compliant the population is. And that's why if you're really concerned about government overreach and tyranny and all the rest of it, you should want to get people off of these programs as quickly as possible. Allowing people to buy whatever they want, including all the treats that they want, just has the effect of making them more comfortable being on the dole. It incentivizes dependence. And if you care about the people on food stamps, you shouldn't want that for them. If you care about having a free and prosperous country, you shouldn't want that either. And that is why the people in my comments valiantly defending the behemoth welfare state are all today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
Today on The Ben Shapiro Show, the entire Trump national security team ends up with a left-wing journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, on a secret thread about bombing the Houthis. We examine the context and the fallout. Plus, part 3 of the case for Derek Chauvin. That's today on The Ben Shapiro Show. Give it a listen.